very great to be here, have another conversation with you today. Today I'm going to turn it around. There's a question that's come up, and I'm going to ask you what it is. What is disability?
Wow, that's a relative question.
Yeah.
For me, disability is... Wow, that's a really interesting question. To give you a specific answer, my disability is paraplegia. So I was being an idiot on my motorcycle one morning and doing 100 something, got hit by a truck, hit a building and a flight of stairs and broke my back. So for me, I see my disability as my physical limitation based on something that happened to me. Not everybody sees it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got friends that they see disability as the lack of the environment to adapt to what their need is.
Yep.
So there's two different perspectives on just the high level question of what is disability. For what we did in our training and our real estate work, I look at disability in the definition that I described it as for me, that a person has some kind of a limiting factor. And because of that situation, they have a need for accessibility, which then opens the environment up to give them access to where they need to go.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on a point there too, is that you say you have a disability that gives you some lack of access. Is that really the disability? I mean, that's where we turn it around and say, I'm not disabled. I am who I am, but that doesn't work for me.
Right.
Although it works for you.
Yeah, and again, everybody has a different perspective on this. That was so hard for us because you'd think that disability has a definition, but its definition is based on whatever that person's situation is.
Yeah.
So there's no real answer generally to what is a disability or what is disability. What is a disability is a slightly different thing. Again, for me, I look at it as the physical situation that I'm in. I mean, it's you are a specific age, you are a specific race, you are those things that you are.
Yeah.
And when someone's describing me, I also am a paraplegic. It's a fact.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that. And I, because of my paraplegia, use a manual wheelchair.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. People think that they see the chair and think, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, well, the wheelchair is the best thing that ever happened to me, because if there wasn't a wheelchair here, I'd still be in bed.
Yeah.
So again, the whole thing is a perspective. One of the things I really learned when we got into this was when we interviewed Echo, who's become a dear friend of mine, and she's deaf. And she was the first one that really opened my eyes to the fact that the deaf community doesn't see their deafness primarily, and I'm generalizing a little bit, as a disability. That they see it as a cultural thing. They have a communication that's different than the way the majority of people communicate.
Yeah.
So I got reprimanded. You thought that was awesome because it was in a huge public forum when I got reprimanded by somebody from the deaf community because I looped them into the disabled community when they, in the most part, of course, in generalizing again, that they didn't see their deaf situation as a disability. So it's been an interesting perspective for us. We've worked with just about every kind of disability that there is. And again, some see the disability as the lack of the environment. Some see the disability as a physical thing. So it's been an interesting journey around that, and it's really just all about people, and it's their perception.
There's the key word right there. We've talked about that before, but perception is the key word. One of the things that I used to do when I'm just talking to people is I said, now close your eyes and imagine that you're 3 feet tall, and everything you do is at 3 feet tall, and walk around your current world and see what works and what doesn't work. If everybody was 3 feet tall, the world's built completely wrong.
Right. Wrong is an interesting word because wrong for you is potentially right for me.
Right.
So, and that's where it gets complicated in real estate because there's no definition of disability.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no definition of true accessibility because there are so many types of disability that have that need for accessibility.
Yeah, and it isn't necessarily a matter of you are or you aren't. Because, again, we've talked about this, but life's a continuum. And life changes.
It does.
What you are today may not be what you are tomorrow.
Right.
You're a poster boy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't see disability as a bad word.
No.
And it's not everybody sees it that way, but I don't. I mean, my disability is not a bad word for me. It's just a descriptive of who I am. You know, I mean, I'm a 50 whatever year old, you know, white. You know, there's the list of all the things that I am, and one of the things that I am is disabled, and I accept that. I embrace it. I just did a speaking gig. This was so fun. I went and talked to a group of disabled kids. Yeah, and it's a disability employment group. So I tell my story. I talk about what it's like in my world, and then I got done with my story, and one of the girls asked me how I don't get offended, or how do I not get offended when people say things that are offensive. And about me being in a wheelchair. And I just kind of laughed and was like, yeah, well, nobody can offend me. And of course she went, what? I was like, no one has the power to offend me. Only I can give that power up. I own my own emotions. And it was fun because I got to turn it around on them and say, well, you guys realize that I look at my accessibility need, my wheelchair, and as my superpower. I mean, I have something that no one else has. And every one of you in this room has something that no one else has. And that is your superpower. You have something, and we say special. And I love that. That's a powerful word because I have something that's special that no one else has got. I've turned it into a career. I have a public speaking company.
Well, you've been special your entire life.
That is true. That is true. And it's all a matter of perspective, isn't it? Didn't we say perception earlier?
Yeah.
So, that looking at the disability, it's not a bad word. And some people see disability as a bad word, and I don't. It's just a descriptor of who I am.
Yeah. I've got a great anecdote on that. One of the things that I used to have to commute in traffic all the time, and somebody would cut you off, and you'd get so ticked off. And, it'd just like ruin your morning. And then I got to thinking about it, that guy probably went to work, didn't even think about it, had a great day, probably had the best day ever, And then somebody I was working with, used a great analogy. He said, it's, you getting mad about that is kind of like taking poison and hoping someone else will die. And I went, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, that's true. And you control that.
I control that.
That's right. That's right. And, looking at the word disability it's an individualistic thing.
Yeah.
That again, like we said earlier, some people in our learnings look at disability as a social construct, where I see it as a personal descriptor.
Yeah.
And when someone says to me, you're disabled, well, yes, my body works in a different way than someone else's. I actually had a funny experience. I was with I have a family group, and we were all at a hockey game. And we were after the hockey game, and people had been drinking at the hockey game, as they do.
No.
And there was a guy who was sitting on this outside little seating area, and he was well on his way to having a good time. and I said, hey man, I didn't notice this at first. And I went, hey man, can you take our picture for us? And he went, oh yeah. And then he started to stand up. I went, well, if you can stand up, we're good, kind of joking. So then he took the picture, and then he goes, hey, would you take a picture of us if you can stand up? and it was something close to that. And oh my God, my group of friends, his friends were mortified of what he had just said to the guy in the wheelchair. And my little core, they were crying, laughing, because it was so funny that somebody had actually said that to me.
Yeah.
Offended? No, it was pretty damn funny, actually. Yeah. Again, it's perspective.
Yeah, one of the most inspirational things too is our good friend Kenny Salvini has the organization, the Here and Now Project.
Right.
Which is a bunch of people with all kinds of spinal cord injuries, and Kenny himself is quadriplegic. And their group is here now, This is here, and this is now. This is who we are.
Yeah. And when they get together, they talk about getting together knee to knee.
Yeah.
That's because you got a bunch of people in wheelchairs. And you just got to watch your toes when that whole group gets together.
Yeah. So with a 1,000-pound power chair running across.
Yeah, that's right.
toes.
Exactly. Yeah, I have to watch out for the power chairs, and let's run an ice skating rink. And then I hold on to the back, and they get momentum, and then they spin me to see how far they can throw the paraplegic. So it gets entertaining. But again, disability, it doesn't have to be looked at as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about real estate and actually getting into the nuts and bolts of accessibility, you don't have to be afraid of it.
No.
Because it's just part of who we are.
It
Just
is what it is.
Every client that somebody who's in real estate has special needs that are important to them, whether they want a mountain view or they want an ocean view or they want an extra garage or they want a huge kitchen. Those are all needs.
Yeah.
And they're special needs to them. From the disability side of things, we just have a set of special needs that are more catered to our individual circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a manifestation of the physical environment, which is what real estate is.
That's exactly right. So, the takeaway of this is that you don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to be afraid to ask.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks. This was a good one. I really enjoyed talking about this one.
I did too.
Cut.